All right, ready to dive deep into something pretty wild. We're talking about the technological singularity.
It's a pretty mind-bending idea, right?
It is. Basically, this idea that technology could advance so rapidly that it, well, zooms past our control and reshapes humanity as we know it.
Exactly. And we're exploring this concept with an essay by Jörg-Owe, who really dives into the nitty-gritty of this idea.
What I find fascinating about Schneppat's take is how he connects this singularity to what's happening right now. It's not just some far-off science fiction. He sees the roots of it in the present.
Yeah, he's not just speculating about some distant future. He's grounding this concept in the trends we're seeing today.
Okay, so let's break it down a bit. You know, we always hear about things like Moore's Law, that computing power doubles every couple of years.
Right.
Is that part of what's fueling this singularity idea?
Absolutely. Schneepat points to Moore's Law as a key driver of this whole accelerating progress.
So the idea is that this exponential growth in computing power could lead to breakthroughs we can't even imagine right now.
Yeah. It's like, technology could snowball, creating this cascade of advancements that just keep building on each other.
And we're not just talking about faster smartphones.
Yeah.
This is about artificial intelligence, biotech, nanotech, all of it.
Exactly. He's looking at the big picture here, and he uses some really compelling examples. Like, have you ever heard of ChatGPT-3?
Oh, yeah. Isn't that the AI that can write, like, different kinds of creative text formats?
It can do poems, codes, scripts, musical pieces, emails, letters, you name it. It can also, like, answer your questions in a really informative way.
Yeah, I've messed around with those AI chatbots, and it's honestly a little freaky how realistic they've gotten. It makes you wonder about the line between human and machine intelligence.
Right. And Schneepat emphasizes that AI, like ChatGPT-3, isn't just mimicking human intelligence. It's demonstrating a capacity for learning and problem solving.
And that's evolving at a pretty crazy pace, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's clear things are moving fast. But when are we talking about for this singularity to actually happen? I know Schneepat mentions Ray Kurzweil in his essay.
Yes. Kurzweil. He's kind of a big name in singularity discussions.
Right. And he predicts it'll happen around 2045 based on his law of accelerating returns. Basically, this idea that technological progress isn't linear, but exponential.
2045. Wow. That's not that far off.
It's definitely getting closer.
Does Schneepat buy into Kurzweil's timeline, though?
Not necessarily. He acknowledges that there's a whole range of opinions on this. And, some folks are skeptical of such specific predictions.
Yeah, makes sense. It seems like predicting something this complex would be incredibly difficult.
Right. I mean, there are so many factors at play.
So the when is still up for debate. What about the what? What are some of the potential impacts of the singularity that Schneepat discusses? Like, how could this actually change things?
Well, he gets into some pretty mind-blowing possibilities. He suggests the singularity could impact everything. Yeah, from our economy and the environment to even our very sense of identity.
Whoa. Okay, so let's try to unpack some of that. Let's start with the economy. I know a lot of people are already worried about AI taking jobs. Does Schneepat address that concern?
Oh, absolutely. He doesn't shy away from it at all. In fact, he points out that AI automation could cause major disruption.
And we're not just talking about manual labor anymore, are we?
Right. It's not just factory jobs. We're talking about AI potentially replacing jobs in, like, law, medicine, even creative fields.
So what happens to people whose skills become obsolete? What happens to everyone else?
That's a huge question, and Schneepat brings up some serious concerns about potential social upheaval.
Right, it's not hard to imagine that if a lot of people are out of work because of AI.
Exactly, and he really stresses the need to figure out how to ensure everyone benefits from these advancements, not just a small elite. How do we make sure everyone's lifted up by this, not just left behind?
So it's not just about the technology itself, but also how we manage the societal shifts that come with it.
Absolutely.
Okay. What about the environmental impact of all this? Does Schneepat touch on that at all?
He does. He highlights some real concerns about what a world dominated by AI would mean for the environment. Like, would efficiency and productivity be prioritized above everything else, even sustainability?
It's almost like a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah.
Technology has the potential to help us solve some of our biggest environmental problems, but
it could also create new ones if we're not careful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So unchecked technological growth could actually end up being detrimental to the planet.
That's a concern he raises, for sure. Like, what happens to ecosystems if we're not paying attention to the potential for harm? We need to be mindful of the unintended consequences.
Okay, so we've got potential economic upheaval, environmental risks. But Schneppet also suggests it goes even deeper than that, right? That the singularity could impact our culture and even our identities.
Yeah, he really goes there. He argues that advancements in AI and things like human enhancement technologies could radically change how we express ourselves.
So much so that it could lead to us reevaluating our cultural values and our personal identities.
Exactly. It's like, what happens when technology can alter our appearance, our abilities, even our thoughts? What does authenticity even mean in that kind of world?
It's almost like we're heading toward a point where the very definition of human is up for grabs. It's mind-blowing.
It is. And that's precisely the point Schneppet is driving at. These are questions we need to be wrestling with right now.
Not just when it's too late.
Right. Not when the singularity has already happened.
Okay, so on one hand, we've got this potential for incredible advancement, but on the other hand, we've got these massive questions we need to address.
It's a lot to consider. And, it's not just about the positive potential, but about the potential risks as well. And that's something Schneppet gets into in a lot of detail.
So he doesn't just lay out the potential impacts, he also explores the criticisms and controversies surrounding the singularity.
He absolutely does. And that's what we'll dig into next.
All right, so before we got sidetracked, we were talking about all these ways the singularity could really shake things up. But Schneppet also, acknowledges that not everyone's buying into this whole singularity thing, right?
Yeah, he spends a good chunk of his essay addressing those criticisms and controversies. He really highlights that not everyone's on board with this vision of the future.
And what are some of the main pushbacks? I'd imagine people are kind of freaked out about AI getting too powerful.
That's a big one for sure. Schneppet talks about the idea of existential risk, which is this fear that superintelligent AI could actually threaten, humanity's very existence.
Okay, so we're not just talking about robots taking our jobs anymore, but maybe, wiping us out completely.
Some critics and Schneppet highlights this worry that a superintelligent AI might decide that, either intentionally or not, that humans are a problem.
We're in the way.
Yeah, an obstacle to its own goals.
Okay, now that's some serious sci-fi movie stuff. But, are we getting carried away here? Are these concerns actually realistic, or are we just letting our imaginations run wild with dystopian fantasies?
It's a fair question, and Schneppet doesn't just dismiss those fears. He actually brings up the work of Nick Bostrom.
Bostrom, yeah, I've heard of him.
Right, he's a philosopher who argues that you've got technological progress, resource limitations, evolutionary pressure. All these things could actually create a scenario where human society is at risk.
So it's not just about some rogue AI going haywire. It's about the whole context that these technologies are developing in. Makes you think.
It does. And there are also criticisms of the singularity timeline itself. That 2045 prediction from Kurzweil did seem pretty soon.
Yeah, 2045, that's right around the corner. I'm not sure I'm ready for all that.
Well, Schneppet acknowledges that a lot of experts are skeptical about such specific predictions.
Makes sense.
Trying to forecast something this complex and multifaceted, it's inherently difficult.
Yeah. And haven't people been wrong about these kinds of technological predictions before?
Oh, absolutely. Historically, predictions about technology have often been way off the mark.
So maybe we shouldn't be circling 2045 on our calendars just yet.
Probably not. But, even if the timeline is fuzzy, the core question remains, can machines really become smarter than us?
That's the big one, isn't it? It's Can AI really surpass human intelligence?
And Schneppet gets into some really fascinating philosophical territory here. He talks about this concept of agency in artificial systems.
Agency?
Yeah, can AI actually make its own choices? Can it act independently? It's a big topic in posthumanism discussions.
Oh, right, posthumanism. We're going to get to that later, aren't we?
We are. But for now, just think about the idea of whether it's even right to attribute agency to AI.
Are we giving machines more credit than they deserve? Are we setting ourselves up for trouble by treating them like they have the same kind of consciousness or free will that humans do?
Exactly. Some people argue that it's dangerous to project human qualities onto AI.
Because it might lead us to give them rights or responsibilities that they're not actually capable of handling.
Right. And Schneppet emphasizes that we need to be really careful about this kind of anthropomorphism.
Okay, so, maybe a healthy dose of skepticism is needed here. It's easy to get caught up in all the hype, but we need to think critically about all this.
Absolutely. And Schneppet also points out that a lot of the public fascination with the singularity isn't really backed up by rigorous scientific evidence.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he notes that many of the most vocal proponents aren't actually AI experts themselves, which raises some questions about how much of this is based on solid research versus speculation.
So it's like buyer beware, right? Take it all with a grain of salt.
Exactly. And even with all the controversy surrounding it, Schneppet argues that we can't just ignore the ethical implications of these powerful technologies.
It's like, even if the singularity doesn't happen exactly the way people predict it, AI is still going to have a huge impact on our lives.
For sure. And he really pushes for establishing some kind of global governance frameworks for responsible AI development.
Because someone needs to be thinking about how to ensure that these advancements are used for good, not for harm.
It's a tall order, but Schneppet suggests that we need collaboration between technologists, ethicists, policymakers. Everyone needs to be involved in figuring this out.
And these conversations need to be happening now, not after the singularity supposedly hits.
Right, we can't afford to wait until it's too late.
It's definitely a lot to think about. And, speaking of big ideas, Schneppet also touches on some related concepts that help put all this in context, things like transhumanism and posthumanism.
Yeah, these are big ones. They really delve into the philosophical and ethical implications of using technology to fundamentally alter the human condition.
Which is incredibly relevant to our discussion, right?
Okay.
Because if the singularity does happen, it's going to force us to redefine what it even means to be human.
Absolutely. It's going to challenge our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
All right, well, let's dive into those ideas when we come back, because we're about to explore the fascinating and sometimes unsettling worlds of transhumanism and posthumanism. Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the technological singularity, and we've got Jörg-Owe to thank for taking us this far.
His work has really given us a lot to think about, hasn't it?
It really has. We've talked about the potential impacts of the singularity, the criticisms and controversies, and now we're getting into these even broader ideas, transhumanism and posthumanism.
Right. Those are kind of like the philosophical underpinnings of a lot of this discussion.
So let's start with transhumanism. What's that all about?
Basically, transhumanism is all about using technology to enhance the human condition. Things like genetic engineering, brain-computer interfaces, even life extension technologies.
So it's like we're not just accepting our limitations, we're trying to transcend them through tech.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very proactive approach to human evolution, you could say.
But, there must be some ethical concerns with all of this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Schneppet definitely addresses those. He talks about questions of consent, coercion, the potential for widening social inequalities.
Like, what happens if only the wealthy can afford to enhance their intelligence or their physical abilities?
Right. It creates a whole new kind of class divide. And then there's the philosophical question of what it even means to be human if we're constantly pushing the boundaries of our biology and our minds.
That's a lot to consider. Okay, so that's transhumanism. What about posthumanism? How does that fit in?
Well, posthumanism takes it a step further. It kind of moves beyond the idea of just enhancing humans and starts exploring what lies beyond the traditional definition of human.
So like creating entirely new life forms through technology.
That could be part of it, or the merging of humans and machines.
Whoa. So less about enhancing humans and more about transcending humanity altogether.
In a way, yeah. Posthumanists often challenge this idea that humans are the pinnacle of existence,
It's definitely a different way of looking at things.
It is. And Schneppet explains that they argue for broadening our perspective to include other forms of intelligence, other ways of being.
So like recognizing that there could be other intelligent life out there, whether it's extraterrestrial or artificial.
Exactly. And, there are a lot of different viewpoints within posthumanism. Some see it as a path toward greater understanding and acceptance, while others worry about, losing what makes us uniquely human.
So it comes back to that fundamental question, doesn't it? What does it mean to be human in a world of rapidly advancing technology?
Yeah. And how much of ourselves are we willing to change or even leave behind in the pursuit of progress?
It's a pretty heavy question.
It is. And, Schneppet ties all of this back to the idea of existential risk. Remember, both transhumanism and the singularity carry this potential for technology to threaten humanity's survival.
Right. So it's not just about robots taking our jobs or creating new social divisions. It's about the possibility of, extinction.
It's a sobering thought for sure.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's also a necessary one, right? We need to be having these conversations.
Absolutely. Schneppet's work is all about reminding us that with great power comes great responsibility. We need to be aware of the potential consequences of our actions and make conscious choices about the future we're creating.
Well, he's certainly given us a lot to ponder. Big thanks to Jörg-Owe for his insightful work and for helping us navigate this deep dive into the technological singularity.
It's been a wild ride.
It has. And as always, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on all of this? Do you think the singularity is inevitable? How do you envision the future of humanity in a technologically advanced world? Share your thoughts in the comments, and until next time, keep exploring.